Hall's obituary in the November 1990 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal stated, and I quote, "Hall did not teach a new doctrine, but was an ambassador of an ageless tradition of wisdom that enriches us to this day. The secret teachings of all ages is also known by an alternative name. Its formal title is an encyclopedic outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolical philosophy." The obituary referred to this encyclopedic outline as being one of his 4 best-known books. Manly P. Hall wrote a 26-page foreword for a book published by the Mother Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite called Your Amazing Mystic Powers. This book was written by Henry C. Clausen, 33rd degree, the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite. The cover of the book shows the throne room of the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., and in that room we can see the black stone altar and the elevated throne with golden snakes on each side where Clausen was seated during the rituals. I want to draw your attention to the emblem that Clausen wore on his head when he was seated on the throne of the Scottish Rite. The emblem on his Grand Commander's hat is called the Knights Templar Cross, or the Sigil of Baphomet. This emblem was also used by another famous 33rd degree Mason, Aleister Crowley. In the picture of Crowley, in his full Masonic regalia, we see to the left of Crowley's face the Sigil of Baphomet with Crowley's signature. While he was laying the foundation for modern Satanism with his doctrines of blood sacrifice and ritual sex, Crowley was being awarded the highest degrees of Freemasonry the world over. Crowley was more than a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason. He rose to the 97th degree Grand Hierophant of the Rite of Memphis. Crowley's blatant practice of homosexuality and bestiality earned him the reputation of being the most wicked man alive. But this did not stop the flood of Masonic honors that were heaped upon Crowley. The current Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite, Fred Kleinknecht, also uses the Sigil of Baphomet with his signature. Like Clausen, Fred Kleinknecht displays the Sigil of Baphomet on his hat. A recent Scottish Rite article tried to set the record straight, so to speak. The Scottish Rite denies that the emblem refers to Baphomet. They would have us believe that is the Cross of Salem. Well, all I can say is that's not what Aleister Crowley called it. Crowley spoke of his Masonic honors, saying, "I possess more exalted titles than I have ever been able to count. I am supposed to know more secret signs, tokens, passwords, grand words, grips, and so on than I could actually learn in a dozen lives. An elephant would break down under the insignia I am entitled to wear." Crowley also wrote about blood sacrifices in his book, Magic in Theory and Practice, instructing the reader that the animal should therefore be killed within the circle or the triangle, as the case may be, so that its energy cannot escape. The bloody sacrifice, though more dangerous, is more efficacious, and for nearly all purposes, human sacrifice is the best. A male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most satisfactory and suitable victim. Masons are eager to brag about famous Masons that bring honor and prestige to the lodge. What the fraternal organization of Freemasons doesn't want the public to know is that virtually all of the most powerful figures in the occult world have been Freemasons. We have already seen Freemason Eliphas Levi shown here. Levi was one of the most legendary of all occult figures. He lived in France in the 19th century and wrote what would become textbooks for black magicians and sorcerers. Levi's books are widely used today. Eliphas Levi had 2 students in America who were destined to become famous Masons. One of them was 33rd degree Aleister Crowley. Crowley thought that he was Eliphas Levi reincarnated. Levi's other famous student was Albert Pike. Albert Pike was the sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite from 1859 to 1891. He was responsible for rebuilding the Scottish Rite after the Masons were purged from the churches during the revival that was spearheaded by Charles Finney. Albert Pike stands as probably the greatest Masonic authority in the history of American Freemasonry. Albert Pike was the author of Morals and Dogma, a book published by the authority of the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite. When sections of Pike's writings contained in Morals and Dogma are placed side by side with the writings of Eliphas Levi, it becomes obvious that Pike plagiarized some of his writings. Pike clearly embraced the teachings of Levi. He took the Kabbalistic and Luciferian doctrine which is found in Morals and Dogma directly from the books of Freemason Eliphas Levi. In Morals and Dogma, Pike speaks to the significance of Masonic oaths. Pike wrote that the oath at the Masonic altar binds a newly initiated Mason to every other Mason in the world. Upon entering the order, the initiate binds to himself every Mason in the world. Once enrolled among the children of light, every Mason on earth becomes his brother and owes him the duties, the kindnesses, and the sympathies of a brother. Are you a Mason? Have you bound your soul with a death oath to men like Crowley, Westcott, Pike, and Hall? If so, we implore you to be obedient to Jesus Christ and His Word. Paul wrote, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God, as God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty." There is a promise contained in this scripture. If you will come out from among them and stop touching the unclean thing, then Jesus is willing to receive you. God is willing to accept you into His family, but there can be no compromise with this ungodly system. Freemasonry is clearly not of God. We invite you to let Jesus Christ set you free from the bondage of Freemasonry. This video only scratches the surface of the connection between Freemasonry and satanic ritual abuse. The literature of Freemasonry is full of occultism and various forms of Satanism. Masonic lodges have a strategy in place to ensnare new Master Masons through the use of this literature. You now know that ruling Masonic bodies, such as the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, actually recommend books written by hardcore Luciferians. You have seen that Freemasonry and those who practice human sacrifice and other forms of satanic ritual abuse share a common body of literature. You now know about the occultic background of some of Freemasonry's most famous and respected members. There is no